Phil Gormley, you're the chief executive of Each, which is quite a new role for you. So why
Yes.
did you decide to be part of the Each family?
Well, I'd known about Each for years and years. So before I did this job, I was in policing, and I had been the chief constable of Norfolk going back to 2010, 2013, and there were a couple of charities you couldn't help but be aware of, and Each was one of those. So, it is just an inspiring organisation, and I take no credit for it whatsoever. But the opportunity last year to join and hopefully make a contribution was just something that I couldn't resist, and it's just a brilliant organisation. We've got Bryn on the call, and the work that our staff do, our volunteers, and the parents. It's just it's just brilliant. I don't know quite how to express it, Evelyn, really, but it's the best decision I have ever made in my professional life, without a
Well,
shadow of a doubt.
oh, that's fantastic. Well, we're very lucky that you are part of that family. And of course, Bryn has talked about, the many services and
Yeah.
lines of support that are offered by Each. But what are some of the things that we may not be aware of that Each do?
I mean, Evelyn, it's on the theme of listening. I've done a lot of listening since last August and learned a huge amount. I thought I sort of understood what Each does, and to an extent I did, but that much broader impact. So I had never thought about listening and music and play and art in the way that I do now, and watching Ray and his colleagues, how they've adapted to the circumstances we're all living through, has been actually inspirational. And you talk to the guys and girls, and I think they'd be the first to say that if you talked to them last year, that they'd be delivering some of the services to Bryn and other families digitally through mediums like this, it would have almost been professional heresy. But they are, and we are now delivering music, play, art, emotional support, bereavement counselling, through this kind of technology in a way that we probably never thought we could. We've learned a huge amount. Actually, it's extended our offer and made it more accessible and more convenient in some respects, notwithstanding that we all have a human and emotional need to actually physically get together, but we've adapted and extended our services. So I think as we emerge into the world beyond this pandemic, we will retain some of that knowledge and amplify it and build on it. So I've learned a lot around that, and that's some of the things that I didn't immediately think about when I thought about joining and contributing to Each. The other bit really is around, it is so much more than the child. It is the family, and it's the siblings, and sadly the pressure on relationships, both within families and in the broader setting, is huge, and the needs are way beyond the concentrated requirements around that individual child, and often siblings get lost or forgotten in this. The focus understandably is on the child with those special needs, but often there's a much broader family requirement, and we try and engage and support that. And one of the things I think we're going to need to think much more carefully as a sector, and how we join up our services with adult hospices, is luckily so many of our children are now surviving and thriving into early adulthood in a way that even 10 years ago that might not have been the case. So we at the moment stop our services and support at 18. So what does an age appropriate care environment look like for a young adult? And there's a gap there, and I think as we look to develop over the next few years what we want to do for people, it is trying to bridge that gap that now is very evident, and there's greater need because thankfully children and young people are surviving and thriving into early adulthood and way beyond, actually, in a way that wasn't the case. So we've learned a lot, and we've got a lot more to learn, Evelyn, is what I would say.
Absolutely. It's so interesting that actually that particular gap, and as we all, live longer and so
Yeah.
on, and the extension of technology in order to allow us to function and so on is so prevalent. But that's really, really interesting. And I know that hospices up and down the country spend a lot of their time and energy fundraising. And I know this is the case with each. And I mean, what do you need on a monthly basis to give that basic level of care?
A lot, actually. And as for the reasons, all the great reasons that I've just sort of hinted at in terms of advances, medical advances, of course, they are expensive and complicated and require highly skilled and increasingly skilled staff and equipment to deliver that. And that's great, but it's a bigger and bigger funding challenge. It costs about £15 million a year to keep each running. And in big handfuls, we look to our retail, our shops, our trading to raise about 5 million, and then about 6 million through other voluntary sources. Because the other thing I have learned over the last 8 months is that children's hospices are the poor relation. So adult hospices receive far more of their funding through statutory sources for a whole range of anachronistic and historical reasons, really. So we have to raise more of what we do through voluntary and non-statutory sources. So that's big. And the pandemic, because we have 43 shops that generate about £100,000 a week. So obviously every week they're shut, that's £100,000 that we don't get. Now, we have been very well supported by government grants, and the communities of the 4 counties, including North Essex we serve, have wrapped their arms around us, actually, and we've seen a huge community response. But you know, it isn't plugging the gap in its totality, and this lockdown has been pretty drastic for us. We're projecting an operational deficit of around about £1 million for the next year. Now, we have reserves because good decisions have been made in the past, and I am genuinely confident about the future of the organisation, but that's not to say it's not without its challenges. And we've had to furlough staff, we've had to hold vacancies, we've shut some premises that are not profit making in terms of the retail estate. Our staff have been brilliant in terms of working from home, which has allowed us to release some fairly expensive office accommodation. So we're doing all we can, but it's a big challenge. And you know, corporate donations have contracted because businesses are under pressure, and community fundraising, all those wonderful events where we get together, you know, bubble rushes, cake bakes, coffee mornings, fun runs, all that kind of thing, we can't do. There's been a lot of good stuff online, you know. A lot of people have stepped forward. Griff Rhys-Jones did a brilliant event for us last autumn. And thank you for your drumsticks, which raised money for us. And we've had a fabulous art auction online that raised about 60,000 that concluded in the last 2 weeks. So we're doing things, but it is different.
And I suppose after, you know, once we get through this pandemic, that into the new normal, that you know, hospices are still going to need people. Yes. You know, children need people to connect with. I mean, we all do, of course, but in with the various challenges that they have, and I can't imagine that the number of staff would be reduced.
No, we're doing everything we can, and so far we've been able to maintain our frontline. You know, it's a bit jargonistic, but our service delivery. We're trying to focus every penny that we get on delivering care to families like Bryn and Angela and Oliver, and we will continue to do that. It's you know, it's why we're here. And as I say, people have been extremely generous in terms of looking to support us. It's been really clear to me how valued the organisation is, and that, you know, there's a trust there. They trust us with their money, their donations, to deliver the care as families trust us with the children. So it's a big relationship, and it requires us to listen. You know, we need to listen to the families in terms of, is our service meeting their needs? We need to listen to our donors and our corporate supporters in terms of what they want from us, because it is a relationship, and we must never take that for granted. And you know, one of the big issues for me is getting government to listen. Not that people are anything other than sympathetic, but we're a small sector, a small voice. You know, and in terms of the bigger political conversation, advocating for children's services and children with these sorts of life-limiting conditions is one of the responsibilities that we have, and we need to make sure that in the in the overall clamour for funding and the pressure that's going to be on public sector spending over the next foreseeable future now, that our voices, the voices of our families, are heard.